Hey guys! Tonight we wander barefoot through the echoing green cathedrals of the Yucatan rainforest, where the air tastes of wet bark and sweet rot, and something winged is always watching you. You crouch beneath vines heavy with dew, following a flickering line of torchlight toward a crumbling limestone shrine that hums, not with voices, but with bees. And not just any bees, stingless ones, sleek and silent, kept by the hands of those who've long whispered their language. Welcome to a world where honey is sacred, hives are carved from trees, and talking to bees is less cute Disney fantasy and more daily necessity for not dying. Of course, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Love seeing where and when you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your toes sink into moss and loam as the trees fold around you like ribs in a chest. Somewhere up ahead, the smell of sweet smoke drifts in lazy ribbons. Copal incense, warm and spicy. You push through a curtain of leaves, and there they are, a circle of elders, swaying and murmuring in low tones, faces lit amber by firelight. The jungle pulses softly, alive with nocturnal rustlings and the occasional hoot from an annoyed owl. At the center of this ancient ring stands a tall, sun-split log, hollowed out like a drum and sealed with a waxy plug. It doesn't look like much, more like forgotten yard debris than a sacred object. But this is a jobin, a traditional Mayan beehive. Inside, hundreds of Melipona beechii bees sleep, or pretend to. These little creatures are stingless, gentle, and deeply weird. Unlike their more famous European cousins, Melipona bees whisper. They hum, they tap, they waggle, but never scream. And their keepers? They learned to listen. You lean closer. Someone taps the log softly, 3 times. There's a pause. Then a sound, not from the humans, but from inside the log. A vibration, deep and resonant, like a small wooden cello being plucked from within. That, apparently, is a hello. No one really knows when the Maya started keeping stingless bees, but archaeologists have found depictions of beekeeping going back over 2,000 years. Mayan glyphs show priests holding bees like offerings, and murals show dotted lines arching between men and hives. Some say they represent sound, or maybe scent, or even spirit. Historians still argue whether those lines mean communication, or just bee-related doodles. What's clearer is that by the time Europeans showed up, the Maya had a thriving system of apiculture, domesticated hives, breeding practices, honey harvest rituals, and a full-blown bee deity named Amuzenkab. Not a minor household god, either. He got temples. And yet, beekeeping here wasn't about commerce or crop pollination. This was communication. You didn't keep the bees so much as host them. You offered them a home, sang to them, protected their queens, and in return, they shared their honey, their wax, and maybe, if you were quiet enough, their secrets. You crouch beside an elder now, his hands worn and dark with age. He gently removes the plug from the hive and peers inside, murmuring. Not words, exactly, more like soft coos and clicks. The bees respond with a tremble, a kind of shiver that passes through the colony like wind through grass. You're told not to speak. They listen better than we do, someone whispers. You believe them. A soft buzzing swells, not angry, just aware. It's like a sigh that tickles your skin. A few bees emerge and begin orbiting your face, examining you like TSA agents in tiny black goggles. One bumps your forehead. You flinch. The elder chuckles. She likes you, he says. There are stories, of course there are, about beekeepers who formed bonds with their colonies so strong they could sense illness, death, even betrayal. One tale tells of a boy who lied near a hive and was later stung by another insect. The bees swarmed and devoured the attacker. Justice, bee style. Another says the bees once flew in formation to spell out a message for their keeper, warning him of a coming storm. Sounds crazy, until you realize how many modern researchers believe bees can detect chemical changes in breath, subtle shifts in electromagnetic fields, and even the presence of disease. Do the bees actually understand human speech? Almost certainly not in the way we do. But communication is more than words. Descent, vibration, rhythm. The Mayan language of the bees is built from all these. One historian described it as a choreography of resonance. Whatever that means, it sounds awesome. You watch now as the elder begins a chant, soft, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. The bees settle. The log seems to pulse with a soft golden glow from within, as if the hive were alive. You feel oddly sleepy. Maybe it's the chant, or the smoke, or the warmth from the fire. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the bees. It's not all mysticism, of course. The Maya were deeply practical. They learned which logs best housed colonies, ones from tsalam or jabin trees, how to divide hives without killing the queen, and when to harvest honey without wrecking the brood. The stingless bee's honey, thin, floral, and just a bit sour, was prized not just for sweetness, but for healing. Applied to wounds, fed to infants, mixed into ceremonial drinks. It was medicine, food, and sacrament. But you're not thinking about that right now. You're still staring at the hive, eyes wide, brain foggy. The chant fades, and the bees slowly withdraw. The elder reseals the hive with a firm press of wax and clay. The ceremony ends. The jungle exhales again. You rise slowly, limbs heavy and oddly tingly. One bee has hitched a ride in your hair. She rides there like a tiny queen on a frizzy throne. Someone hands you a gourd cup. Inside is a small spoonful of honey. You sip. It's unlike anything you've tasted, bright, wild, with a strange bite that warms your chest. First harvest, they tell you. It remembers the flowers of spring. And just like that you're in. The bees have acknowledged you, whether you deserved it or not. You walk back through the trees in silence, your footsteps soft in the leaf litter. Somewhere behind you, the hive begins to hum again, already telling stories of your visit. The next morning breaks slowly, like honey poured over stone. You wake in a hammock that creaks like an old laugh, half buried under a woven blanket smelling faintly of smoke and beeswax. Outside, the world buzzes, not just with insects, but with a low, rhythmic pulse of people beginning their day. Chickens complain. Dogs argue. Someone's grinding maize, probably too loudly for this early in the morning. You stretch, step out barefoot, and immediately get a pebble between your toes. Classic. But the moment you round the corner toward the Beekeepers' grove, the morning sharpens, because now you can hear it. That low, papery murmur of Melipona bees starting their slow, deliberate work. Now let's be real. If you're used to those chunky black and yellow honeybees with their passive-aggressive stingers, Melipona beechii is going to look like an overgrown gnat trying cosplay. They're tiny, maybe a centimeter long. No dramatic stripes. No wings that roar like motorcycles. Just sleek little bodies, matte black or chocolate brown, legs tipped in bright yellow fuzz, flitting silently through the air like flying commas. But these bees? They're a big, big deal. To the Maya, Melipona weren't just insects. They were messengers. Ancestors. Sometimes even gods in disguise. You're not just watching bugs. You're watching a buzzing, feather-light archive of generations who believed, deep down, that these creatures knew things humans forgot. That if you were gentle, humble, and weirdly good at falsetto humming, the bees might just talk back. Biologically, Melipona are fascinating. They don't sting, can't infect. Their stingers have withered into irrelevance, which means their main line of defense is biting. These gentle jungle spirits will occasionally resort to tiny bites if provoked. It's like being nibbled by a moving eyelash. Don't laugh, they're trying. And unlike the globally famous Apis mellifera, Melipona colonies are picky. They can only thrive in very specific conditions: warm, humid, stable. They need cavities to build their waxy, spiraled nests, which is why the Mayans offered them hollow logs. No plastic boxes or mass-scale industrial farms. These bees need artisanal architecture. Here's the kicker. Despite their fragility, Melipona hives can survive for decades. A single hive, passed down through generations, becomes a kind of family heirloom, half pet, half oracle. Some families in Yucatan still remember hive logs their great-great-grandparents kept, which is sort of adorable if you think about it. Here's Grandma's wedding dress, and here's her sacred bee stick full of ancestral insects. You approach one now. The hive sits nestled between two trees, a log sealed with clay and wax at both ends, about the length of your forearm. A few bees drift in and out through a single perfect hole, like polite guests entering a speakeasy. No chaos, no drama, just quiet, focused energy. A young boy, maybe 10, walks past you carrying a carved gourd of water. He stops to whisper something at the hive and taps it once. You lean in. Was that a click? The bees responded. Or maybe you just imagined it. Either way, your skin prickles. You're not the first outsider to feel that. In fact, one fringe anthropologist, name redacted for dramatic effect, once claimed Melipona bees can sense human intention. He wrote an entire, somewhat unpublished, paper arguing that aggressive people make hives go silent, while gentle visitors trigger soft buzzing and synchronized movements. Historians still argue whether that's actual science or just an over-caffeinated guy in the jungle with a tape recorder and mild heat stroke. Still, the idea lingers. What if these bees do pick up on something deeper? One undeniable fact: the Maya were incredible observers. They knew these bees inside and out. Melipona bees are what scientists call eusocial, a fancy way of saying they have a queen, a hierarchy, and collective labor. Think ancient startup, but with better work-life balance and no VC funding. The hive includes the queen, aka she who lays a ridiculous number of eggs, worker bees, all female, and a handful of lazy drone males who exist solely to mate and vibe. But unlike honeybees, Melipona queens don't rule by fear. There's no violent coup when a new queen is chosen. No Game of Thrones winged edition. Instead, the hive raises multiple royal candidates, then lets them talk it out. Literally. They produce subtle vibrations, low-frequency buzzes that scientists are still trying to decode. Sometimes, one will win by resonating at just the right pitch, which somehow convinces everyone she's queen material. Does this mean the bees use music to vote? That's the current hypothesis. And if you think that's wild, remember, whales do it. Birds do it. Heck, even humans vote emotionally to the sound of campaign music. Why not bees? And this brings us back to the real miracle. The Maya didn't just notice these things, they incorporated them. You begin to realize that their entire relationship with the bees hinged not on dominance, but on understanding. Observation turned to ritual. Habit turned to tradition. Want another quirky fact? Melipona bees can navigate not just by sunlight, but by polarized light, meaning they can see through clouds and foliage in a way that feels borderline supernatural. That's why they're so good at living deep in the jungle canopy, mapping complex 3D routes through vines and branches without ever asking Siri. And somehow, the Maya seem to understand this. Their myths often portrayed bees as cosmic navigators, slipping between worlds. Some even linked them to the Milky Way, tiny emissaries of celestial order. The hive was seen as a reflection of the universe, dark inside, golden at the core, pulsing with secret music. Sound familiar? You sit near a hive and let your breathing slow. The bees work around you, never colliding, never panicking. They know you're there. One lands on your knee and grooms itself with a kind of luxurious laziness, like a cat who's also a priest. You almost don't want to leave, but the elder is calling. He wants to show you the inside of a hive next. The structure, the wax pots, the spiraling nursery chambers and hidden queen. And yes, the crocodile dung lining, but we'll get to that delight soon enough. As you rise, a bee bumps your cheek again. Maybe it's the same one as last night. Maybe she remembers you. Or maybe, just maybe, you're starting to remember her. You crouch beside the hive again, hands on your knees, half expecting the log to open like a treasure chest. The elder beside you, barefoot, stooped, and probably older than the entire log itself, rubs his thumb across a seam in the wax. With a gentle twist, the hive creaks open like a well-used book, revealing the inside of a world very few ever see. You don't gasp exactly, but your breath does hitch. It's not what you expected. No symmetrical honeycomb walls like the neat little penthouses of European bees. Instead, the hive is wild and organic, curving waxy chambers stacked like tiny clay pots, nestled together in a dark, glistening spiral. It looks like an alien city built by drunk architects with impeccable taste. The inside smells alive. Thick, sweet, a little musky. Like old honey soaked into wood and memories. You lean closer. Little black bees glide in and out of pods, some capped with wax, others open to reveal golden nectar or pearly white larvae curled like tiny commas. The elder taps the side with a knuckle and mutters something under his breath. A slow, sleepy vibration ripples through the colony. They're awake now, watching you. Here's something you didn't know you needed in your life. Meliponiculture, the science and art of stingless beekeeping, isn't just about honey. It's about architecture. These hives are masterpieces of bioengineering. Inside the log, the bees build horizontal combs for their brood, layer upon layer of eggs and pupae, while surrounding these nursery zones with tiny pots of honey and pollen. Everything's compact, efficient, and, according to some fringe biologists, acoustically resonant. That's right, the hive might actually sound better inside than out. But no one's sure. Historians still argue whether these structures evolved for temperature control, defense, or maybe as part of their sound-based social system. Some even suspect the curved chambers enhance B2B communication. It's basically a concert hall for bugs. But not all of this is nature. The hive log itself is human-made, carefully chosen and crafted from local trees like jabin or tsalam, dense woods that hold in heat, repel termites, and smell nice when you're working barefoot in 90% humidity. Once hollowed out, the log is sealed at each end with a mix of clay and wax, and yes, crocodile dung. There it is. You cringed. The dung, however, isn't just there for flavor. It serves as a natural pesticide, warding off beetles and ants. Apparently, jungle pests have standards. They draw the line at reptile poop. And to the Maya, crocodiles weren't just animals. They were spiritual guardians. The log hive becomes both home and temple. You're handed a smooth, flat tool carved from bone. Part scraper, part scoop, part, what am I holding exactly? The elder nods, and you slowly reach into the hive. Sticky, alive. You gently lift a wax pot, careful not to crush it. It quivers slightly in your grip. Inside is honey so clear and golden it looks like bottled sunlight. You taste it. No, you feel it. It dances on your tongue, floral, tangy, with a faint wild funk like fermented fruit and old stories. This isn't grocery store honey. This is bee-brewed jungle gold. Used in rituals, medicine, and one deeply unpleasant eye infection remedy you really hope no one offers you tonight. Back in the hive, a few bees land on your hand. They don't bite. They just rest. One appears to taste your skin with her feet, which, if you think about it, is how most of us feel during summer wedding buffets. The question bubbles up, how did the Maya learn all this? This isn't beginner-level beekeeping. This is advanced apiculture meets spiritual diplomacy. You can't just stumble into this kind of knowledge. Someone had to experiment, document, teach. And that's exactly what they did. Ancient Maya codices, what little survived colonial fire, mention bees and beekeeping in reverent detail. Stone carvings show figures offering honeycombs to gods, and old murals from places like Uxmal depict beekeepers carrying log hives over their shoulders like sacred burdens. These weren't hobbyists. These were high-status professionals. Some modern scholars even suggest that beekeeping knowledge was passed through tightly guarded oral traditions, taught to chosen apprentices through stories, rituals, and hands-on mentorship. It wasn't just how to harvest honey. It was how to read the hive, how to speak without words, and, yes, how to properly apply crocodile dung. You glance around. The grove is quiet except for the bees and a gentle wind rustling the trees. In the background, someone is singing a low, looping melody in a language you don't know but instinctively trust. It blends with the buzzing. You close your eyes. Then a sudden slap on your shoulder. You flinch. It's a girl your age, grinning, holding a clay bowl filled with small dark pellets. "Bee poop," she says in perfect deadpan. "For your face." You blink. Then she laughs and hands you the bowl. Turns out it's not bee poop, thank goodness, but propolis, the dark resinous goo bees make from plant sap, wax, and their own enzymes. It smells sharp and medicinal, like old pine needles and fire smoke. The Maya used it for sealing wounds, purifying water, and yes, sometimes as skincare. You dab some on your cheek. It tingles. Or maybe you're imagining that. Just another day in the hive. Before you leave, the elder replaces the wax plug and gently rubs a smear of clay across the seam. The bees settle. The hive sleeps. But not really. Inside, they're still buzzing, still working, still remembering. You step back, a little stickier, a little wiser, and probably mildly fermented. You glance at your hands. Still tingling. A bee rests on your wrist, completely still. And for a second, you swear she's listening. You're walking now, away from the grove and deeper into the shade of the ceiba trees, those towering pillars the Maya believed held up the sky. The elder is leading you, his pace slow but deliberate. He hums under his breath, not a tune exactly, more like a vibration, a resonance that seems to float between the trees and into your bones. You ask where you're going. He just grins and points forward. To where the bees speak, he says. Sure. Totally normal jungle activity. You come upon a clearing dotted with flat stones and moss, as if nature has arranged a secret amphitheater. At its center sits a circular platform woven from reeds and bark, low to the ground, shaded by a crude but elegant thatch canopy. Smoke curls lazily from a bowl of burning copal resin, its scent thick and sweet, like incense mixed with molasses and mystery. Here, you're told, is where the ancient beekeepers held their ceremonies. Not every day, only on special moons or at the start of bee seasons, or when things felt off. This wasn't just a meeting place. It was a dialogue chamber. The Maya didn't just keep bees. They talked to them. Not with words, of course, though there's evidence they believed the bees understood spoken language in some form. Instead, they used sound, breath, gesture, and scent. You sit, cross-legged, as the elder begins to demonstrate. He lifts a long, hollow reed flute carved with tiny spirals. The mouthpiece rests against his lips, but he doesn't blow. Instead, he hums into it. The note is low, somewhere between a purr and a prayer. It vibrates in your chest. The pitch changes, sliding up and down, like a bee's flight path rendered in sound. Around the edges of the clearing, a few bees arrive, not in swarms, just scattered scouts, landing gently on leaves and the elder's bare arms. You can't believe it. They're listening. Historically, this was known. Sort of. Some early colonial chroniclers wrote, with a very skeptical tone, that Maya priests could call bees from the forest with their voices. Most scholars dismissed this as folklore, but others, they weren't so sure. Modern studies show that Melipona bees are highly sensitive to frequency and vibration. Unlike Apis mellifera, which rely more on visual cues and pheromones, Melipona bees seem to communicate more heavily through sound, especially low-frequency pulses and wing humming. Their entire hive is essentially an orchestra pit. So the idea that Maya beekeepers learned to mimic or harmonize with those sounds, not as far-fetched as it seems. You try it yourself. You hum softly, unsure of what note to start on. The elder places his hand lightly on your throat. Yes, it's weird, and adjusts your pitch by nodding or shaking his head. When you hit the right note, something clicks. A bee lifts off a leaf and zips toward you, circling your face once before settling near your ear. It's not just a trick. It's a conversation. There's a fringe theory, because of course there is, that some Maya beekeepers trained their voices so finely they could communicate distress, joy, or intent to their bees. A kind of interspecies empathy channel. Historians still argue whether this was more symbolic than real. But standing here, in the flickering shade, humming like a druid karaoke contestant while bees gather to listen, you're not so sure it's symbolic at all. Then, the elder claps once. Chirp, flute. The bees scatter. He nods. That was the end of conversation's signal, apparently. You ask how many different sounds there were. He raises 4 fingers. One to call, one to calm, one to gather, one to release. A language without words. A dialect of hums and pulses. It's both elegant and oddly punk rock. You learn one more sound before leaving. A rolling, throaty trill meant to mimic the vibration of a queen's call. It's harder than it sounds. Your voice cracks. The elder laughs and slaps your back, nearly knocking you into a shrub. He's right to laugh. You sound like a confused pigeon in therapy. But hey, practice makes perfect. Before heading back, the elder places a smear of crushed bee pollen on your forehead. A kind of blessing. You're one of the hive now, he says. Whether or not you've earned that title remains to be seen, but the gesture sticks with you. Quite literally. The pollen is sticky. On the way back, you hear something else. The rhythm of bees inside the hive logs. Not just the usual drone, but patterns. A thrum followed by silence. Then another thrum, slower. Repeating. The elder stops and listens. That's a warning, he says, tapping the log with 2 fingers. Storm is coming. You squint at the sky. Not a cloud in sight. Just a perfect, lazy blue. But that night, the rain arrives in sheets, hot and hard, slamming the palm roofs and pooling in the dirt. The hives are quiet, sealed tight. You sit under the thatch, watching the lightning flash over the canopy. And in the quiet moments between thunderclaps, you swear you can still hear that hum. The queen's voice, maybe. Or just the jungle reminding you who's really in charge. One last weird fact before you sleep. Some Maya believed that when you died, your soul could be reborn as a Melipona bee. Not a bird, not a jaguar. A bee. Tiny. Stingless. And filled with honey and memory. Not a bad afterlife when you think about it. Rain has passed, leaving the air sticky and the earth steaming like a jungle stew. You wake up tangled in your hammock, the woven fibers imprinted on your skin like a temporary tribal tattoo. Outside, water still drips from the trees in lazy plinks, But the bees are already back to work, tiny black shadows flitting from bloom to bloom with the single-minded intensity of caffeine-charged baristas. Today, you're headed somewhere different. The elder tells you it's a sacred site, older than memory, older than myths, the kind of place where even the birds hush when they fly over. He says it's where the first conversation between humans and bees took place. And you think, sure, sounds like a perfectly reasonable way to spend a Thursday. The trail winds upward now, into a limestone ridge choked with orchids and vines. Every step squishes. Your shoes gave up hours ago, but it's fine. Your feet are now 70% callous, 30% regrets. Eventually, the trees part, and you find yourself staring at what looks like a collapsed stone beehive the size of a small temple. This is no coincidence. The structure before you is a ruined shrine, half swallowed by roots, but unmistakably carved with bee-like motifs. Spirals, hexagonal imprints, and figures with elongated eyes and wings outstretched. You trace a glyph with your finger and feel a faint buzz beneath the stone, like the residue of ancient ceremonies still echoing inside. The elder calls it the House of Shuanon-Cab. That name sounds familiar, right? Shuanon-Cab means Royal Lady Bee in Yucatec Maya. It's also the species name for the Melipona bee. But to the Maya, she wasn't just an insect. She was a spirit, a queen, a literal deity. Here, in this temple, she was once honored with offerings, bowls of honey, bundles of wildflowers, carved figurines made of wax. Some ceremonies were performed to ask for her favor in the coming season. Others were to mourn dead hives, or to celebrate the blooming of the tzidilk tree, whose tiny white blossoms basically scream, "Bees, please." The elder lays out a small bundle. Inside, crushed cacao, honey, and shredded copal bark. He mashes it into a sticky ball and sets it aflame. Sweet smoke curls upward, and that same low humming begins again. Not from him this time, but from somewhere behind you. You turn. Dozens. Silent. Still watching. It's eerie and beautiful in equal parts. This, you learn, was part of an ancient tradition, the Kol Kain, or sun-welcoming rite. Beekeepers would gather at dawn to make offerings to Shuanon-Cab and the sun god Kinichahau. The goal? Sync the bees' rhythm with the solar calendar. You think of it as a jungle version of daylight savings, only far more elegant and less rage-inducing. And here's the historical anchor for tonight's fact buffet. Archaeologists have found pottery shards, codex fragments, and wall art in places like Tulum and Tikal that clearly depict these kinds of rituals. Sometimes the bees are shown flying around the heads of priests. Sometimes they're drawn hovering between heaven and earth, acting as messengers. Here's the quirky twist. Some fringe scholars believe the Maya created special singing pots, designed to hum when wind passed through them, mimicking the buzz of bees. The idea is that these pots were placed around temples or hung in trees near ceremonies to enhance the atmosphere. Basically, the original jungle sound system. Historians still argue whether those pots were really bee-related or just decorative. But the idea sticks in your mind. A world where humans composed entire environments just to harmonize with insects. You're invited to leave your own offering now. You panic slightly. You don't have cacao. Or flowers. Just lint and an old mint from the bottom of your bag. But then you remember the strip of wax from earlier. You kneel, warm it with your hands, and shape it into a little spiral. Clumsy, but earnest. You place it beside the others. The elder doesn't say anything, just gives you a nod that feels like a knighthood. As you explore the temple further, you notice narrow tunnels running through the stone, about the width of your thumb. The elder explains these weren't for water or air. They were hive conduits. Bees used to live inside the stone itself. The temple was alive, quite literally, a buzzing monument to cooperation. And here's your final weird tidbit of the day. Some Maya oral traditions say the temples themselves could sing when the bees inside vibrated in unison, that if you stood quietly enough, you could hear the walls hum back. You try it. You lean against a moss-covered pillar and close your eyes. Silence. Then a low, resonant buzz, so faint you think it might be your own heartbeat. Or maybe it's both. When you open your eyes again, the clearing is filled with golden light. Bees swirl lazily in the beams, little flecks of living dust. The elder is already halfway down the path, leaving you in that sacred stillness with a head full of questions and a heart buzzing louder than any hive. So, to recap, you've just witnessed a temple designed for bees. You've heard humming used as actual communication. You've been spiritually knighted with wax and pollen. And you may or may not be hallucinating walls that sing. Sleep tight, right? You wake with a rising mist, your hair thick with dew and your neck doing that weird crick thing it does after hammock naps. Birds trill overhead, their songs a blend of tropical jazz and over-caffeinated chaos. Somewhere in the underbrush, a howler monkey warms up like he's auditioning for a heavy metal scream-off. But in the hive logs nearby, just the soft, rhythmic hum of bees at work, endless, focused, sacred. Today's lesson is about hierarchy. You know bees have queens, because every cartoon ever has told you so, but Melipona bees? They don't just have queens. They have drama. Royal drama. Soap opera-level hive politics playing out on the tiniest of stages. The elder, of course, doesn't call her the queen. He says Batab Cab, ruler of the bees. And just like the human bat abs, the queen isn't chosen by accident. She's raised, groomed, and sometimes eliminated. No pressure. You crouch beside a hive log as the elder gently pries open a slice of the wax casing. Inside, it's a labyrinth. Not a neat hexagon grid like those perfect European honeybee hives. This looks more like something from an alien spaceship, organic spirals and stacked pots, dripping with golden nectar and dotted with tiny glistening larvae. There she is, the queen, plump, slow-moving, and surrounded by a coterie of attendants. They feed her, clean her, and keep her perfectly positioned. But the vibe isn't exactly regal grace. It's more like a very important burrito being carried through a crowd by overworked interns. The elder explains that the queen doesn't rule by strength. She rules by scent. Her pheromones are the hive's social glue, suppressing other females' ability to develop ovaries, calming aggression, and guiding construction. Take her away, and the whole hive panics like a group chat without an admin. Here's your historical nugget. Ancient Maya glyphs depict queens not as warrior women, but as serene figures with radiant heads, sometimes flanked by bees, sometimes emerging from flowers. They were considered embodiments of divine order. If the queen thrived, the hive thrived. If she weakened, the entire colony could collapse, both physically and spiritually. Now here's the twist. In Melipona hives, there's often more than one potential queen. Royal rivals. And they all hatch at the same time. You watch as the elder points to a wax pot sealed with a glossy cap. Soon, he says, that's a princess in the making. And when she hatches, she'll either be smuggled out by her attendants or fight to the death with her sisters. No tiaras, no sash, just a straight-up royal cage match. Quirky fact alert. In some Maya communities, beekeepers would intervene at this moment. They'd remove extra princesses and raise them separately, literally pulling baby royalty out of a war zone to start new hives. Like bee foster care. Or ancient microhive startups. You ask the elder if they still do that. He shrugs. Sometimes. If they ask nicely. Sure. Because obviously bees ask. There's a quiet moment as you watch the hive pulse and breathe, the wax pots glinting like gold inside a cathedral. And then you remember, the Maya didn't just revere queens, they also identified with them. Some rulers, especially women in priestly lineages, took on bee titles. They were known as daughters of Shuan-on-Cab or mothers of the hive. Scholars still argue whether these were ceremonial phrases or indicated actual beekeeping expertise, but the symbolic connection is clear. The health of the people mirrored the health of the hive. Every drop of honey echoed divine balance. Here's a little-known tidbit. In certain rituals, the queen bee's wax chamber was wrapped in cotton and carried like a relic, its emergence seen as a sacred sign. Think of it like waiting for a prophecy, but in bug form. Back in the present, the elder gestures for you to hold out your hand. A worker bee lands in your palm. She's warm, gentle. You feel the vibration of her wings, not flying, just humming, like a quiet engine powering the hive. She knows you, he says. You resist the urge to panic or sneeze. You stare at the bee and she stares back, her little antennae twitching like she's scanning your aura. Maybe she does know you. Maybe you're on some secret bee list now. Or maybe she just landed because your hand smells like banana chips. Either way, it's a moment. Then the elder tells you a secret. One that doesn't make it into most textbooks. Some Maya beekeepers claimed that if a hive's queen died suddenly, the other bees would fly in formation, spelling glyphs in the air to summon a new one. Others believed the queen's spirit could enter a young girl in the village, guiding her dreams or instincts until a new hive was founded. Yes, it sounds far-fetched, but you've spent enough time out here to stop questioning the strange. Not everything that's true needs to be proven, the elder mutters. You nod like that's not the most confusing wisdom you've heard all week. As the day ends, you sit beside the hive, watching the slow descent of the sun. The queen is nestled deep inside, her attendants busy, the air thick with floral scents and something else, something ancient and unseen. The hive is calm, balanced, alive. You're not sure what you've learned exactly. Maybe that power doesn't always mean domination. That real leadership hums quietly, sweetly, beneath the surface. Or maybe you're just sun-drunk and bee-dazed. Either way, one thing's for sure. You'll never look at a jar of honey the same way again. You can't stop thinking about the humming. It lingers, even as you lie back in your hammock later that night, jungle breeze brushing across your cheeks like a lazy lullaby. That vibration, deep and constant, not quite a sound, not quite a feeling, just presence. The elder says the bees talk that way. Not with voices. Not even with dance, like the show-off European honeybees. But with resonance. And today, you're going to learn how to listen. You walk the path with new ears. Every rustle, every chirp, every buzz feels like a message you almost understand. It's as if the forest has been whispering all along, and you just never tuned the dial quite right. And yes, that may be the most mystical thought you've ever had before breakfast. When you reach the apiary, the elder is already there, sitting cross-legged, holding what looks like a turtle shell. No, closer look, it's a hollowed gourd. Painted, smooth, polished with something sticky and golden. He taps it lightly. A hum. Not a note, not a chord. Just a tone. Long exactly like the background hum of a hive. You hear it? He asks. You nod, but you don't really. Not yet. He holds it up to your ear and taps again. This time you feel it. Deep in your jaw, your collarbone, somewhere behind your sternum. You're being vibrated like a tuning fork. He smiles. Now they'll talk. So, here's the fringe but fascinating part. Many Maya beekeepers didn't just observe their bees. They believed they could communicate, not in words, not in commands, but in hums. Through frequency and tone, they claimed bees could be calmed, encouraged, even coaxed into specific behavior. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic or literal. Was the humming just ritual? Or did the bees actually respond? Well, today you get to find out. The elder leads you to a hive log and begins what he calls the siege, a humming chant. No words, just rising and falling tones. You notice he doesn't hum at the bees. He hums with them, matching pitch, matching rhythm. It's like joining a choir where half the members have wings. At first, you think it's coincidence. The bees quiet down. Their movements slow. But then one changes direction mid-flight. Another lands on the elder's hand without hesitation. Then another. And another. You try humming. You sound like a broken radiator. The bees ignore you completely. But the elder laughs and says, "It takes time. Years. Or a very good reason." Apparently, some beekeepers would hum certain tones before harvest to gently alert the bees. Others would hum at night to soothe hives after storms. There's even a belief, hold on to your hat for this one, that specific vibrations could repair damaged hives. A kind of apicultural ultrasound therapy, jungle edition. Here's your mainstream history anchor. Across the Maya lowlands, musical instruments like flutes, whistles, and ocarinas were often designed to mimic natural sounds, wind, birds, and yes, buzzing bees. Archaeologists have found bee-shaped instruments in burial sites. Some scholars believe these were used during hive blessings or funerals for collapsed colonies. Funerals. For bees. You're beginning to realize just how deeply these creatures were woven into every thread of Maya life. They weren't tools. They were kin, spiritual neighbors. And you, the awkward outsider, are slowly being invited into the conversation. The elder hands you a different gourd now. Smaller. You shake it gently. Inside, tiny seeds rattle. For rhythm, he says. You both sit cross-legged in front of the hive, humming, shaking, listening. It's a jam session. And the bees? They join in. One settles on your nose. Another dances loops in front of your face. You freeze. But they're not angry. They're just observing, mapping your frequency, feeling your vibe quite literally. And then the elder drops this little gem. Some say, if you hum the right tune, the bees will follow you, even into war. You blink. Come again? Apparently, there are oral stories, half myth, half memory, of ancient warriors carrying bees into battle. Not in jars. In their cloaks. Beekeepers who could command hives to defend or distract. It sounds absurd, until you remember the way the bees moved just now, in sync with your breath. Could it be true? Historians still argue whether those tales were metaphors or fact. Maybe bee warrior meant someone fiercely protective. Or maybe the Maya really did weaponize stingless bees, less as attackers, more as living talismans of loyalty and defense. Either way, you're getting ideas. Dangerous ones. But for now, you focus back in. Your hums have improved. The elder nods. A few bees hover near your knees, then settle. You feel included. That word feels small for the moment. You're not fluent in this frequency. Not yet. But you've picked up your first phrases. Maybe a greeting. Maybe a blessing. Maybe just, we see you. And that's more than enough. As the sun climbs higher and the buzz thickens, the elder hums one final, descending tone. A soft sigh through closed lips. The bees return to their work, slow and content. The ritual is over. You exhale. The silence is loud. Later that night, you'll lie in your hammock and hum to yourself. Not a song. Not a tune. Just a tone. One note. A message. Maybe the bees will hear you. Maybe they'll answer. You wake up humming. Not on purpose. It's just there, in your throat, soft and low like an engine that forgot to turn off. A bee's lullaby, maybe. The elder calls it cab-chanil, the sky buzz, a resonance that stays with people who've spent time near the hives. He says it fades eventually, but only if you stop listening. Today, though, you're not listening. You're tasting. You arrive at the apiary just as the elder finishes prying open one of the hive's honey pots. It glistens like syrup caught in candlelight. He dips a thin, carved spoon into the golden pool and gestures for you to try. One drop. Just one. Your tongue explodes. Forget supermarket honey. Forget farmers' markets. Forget that one time your friend bought artisanal wildflower honey from a trendy shop that smelled like essential oils and regret. This is something else. For citrus. Smoky. Tart. It hits your taste buds like it's been designed for royalty and fermented by time itself. This is Melipona beechii honey. The real deal. And here's your historical anchor. The ancient Maya didn't just consume this honey, they treasured it. Called cab or cob, it was used in rituals, medicine, diplomacy, even taxes. Tributes of honey were demanded by Maya rulers, stacked in clay jars and sent through jungle trade routes that stretched all the way to the Gulf. But this isn't just about honey. It's about the many flavors of a single hive. The elder shows you different honey pots, each slightly different in hue. Some are pale amber, others a deep mahogany. Different flowers, he explains. Different months. You take another drop and find notes of tamarind, guava, even something peppery like wild ginger. Turns out stingless bees are picky shoppers. They forage based on season, bloom, and mood. Which means each pot is a time capsule, a liquid diary of what the forest was feeling that week. Here's your quirky tidbit. Maya beekeepers sometimes named their honeys based on flavor profiles. One variety was known as snake flower honey because of the plant it came from. Another, ghost tree honey, because of the eerie pale flowers the bees loved. And there was one infamous batch called drunken monkey honey, due to its slightly fermented kick. Yes, it made you a little woozy. Yes, they still make it. No, you're probably not ready. You ask if there's a honey for sadness. The elder laughs. All of them. And none. Some honeys were reserved only for ceremonies, births, marriages, funerals. One, particularly rare and dark, was used in rain rituals. Not to be eaten, but to be offered. Left at the base of ceiba trees or poured in spirals around altars. Now, let's dive into one of those deliciously unresolved scholarly debates. Some researchers argue that the honey used in Maya ceremonial cacao, yes, the ancestor of hot chocolate, had to be stingless bee honey. It wasn't just sweetener, it was a sacred ingredient. Others say regular honey worked just fine, and that the Melipona stuff was reserved for elite use. The argument still buzzes. You're too busy licking your fingers to take sides. Later, you help the elder collect honey. It's a careful process. No smoking the bees. No sharp tools. Just gentle fingers, slow movements, and that ever-present humming. The bees barely react. Some even land on your arms as if supervising your technique. You feel honored and slightly judged. Each pot is harvested with a kind of reverence. You notice that some are left untouched. For the bees, the elder says, and for tomorrow. Sustainability before it was trendy. Then he shows you something wild. A honey pot sealed with a thin wax lid, but with tiny glyphs scratched into the surface. No bigger than your thumbnail, but clearly intentional. What do they say? You ask. He shrugs. That depends on who's reading. Some glyphs, it turns out, aren't meant to be read. They're meant to be felt. Protective sigils, passed down from beekeeper to beekeeper. Or perhaps just doodles from someone who believed the bees could understand symbols. Your brain is trying to wrap around this when he hands you a cup. Warm water. A spoonful of the freshest honey. A pinch of crushed cacao. A stir. You sip. Time folds. Your muscles melt into the log you're sitting on. Your heartbeat syncs with the hive. Your breath tastes like sunlight. Somewhere in the background, a bird makes a noise that sounds suspiciously like a kazoo, but even that feels profound. The elder watches you, smiling. Now, he says, you're ready to learn about the honey that heals. You raise an eyebrow. Apparently, Melipona honey isn't just delicious. It's medicine, antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, anti-magic, depending on who you ask. Traditional Maya healers used it for everything from infected wounds to eye drops. Yes, eye drops. Imagine trusting anything that close to your cornea. But the stingless bee honey is so pure, so low in acidity, that it soothes instead of stings. Quirky side note? Some say the bees can sense illness, that they'll avoid people who carry bad energy and buzz more actively around those who need healing. There's zero science to back this, of course. But after spending this much time in their world, you're not about to call anyone crazy. The elder opens a small gourd container, smaller than a fist. Inside, a thick, dark golden salve. For burns, he says. Then another one, this one lighter, almost cream-colored. For sorrow. You pause. He doesn't explain that one. You don't ask. Instead, you scoop a little on your finger, dab it behind your ear, and wait. Nothing changes. And yet, everything softens. As the day winds down, you sit beneath a fruiting tree, licking honey from a carved spoon and wondering why we ever bothered inventing dessert when bees already did it better. You don't speak. You don't need to. The hive is still humming. And you? You hum back. You never expected to become emotionally attached to a bee. And yet, here you are, pacing slowly beside a hollowed-out log, whispering encouragement to a winged insect named Ixji, which the elder insists means little sister in one dialect, though you suspect he just made it up to tease you. Still, Ixji is yours now. Well, sort of. She hatched yesterday, and you've been watching her like a proud and slightly anxious parent ever since. Today, she's ready to fly. And you're nervous. The elder chuckles from his hammock, watching you hover like a helicopter parent. She knows what to do, he says. You don't have to coach her like a soccer dad. You step back. Ixji crawls to the edge of the hive's entrance, testing the air with her antennae. A few of her sisters buzz out and back in quick loops, sending signals invisible to your eye but apparently obvious to her. There she goes. You hold your breath. She flies straight up, then down, then bumps into a leaf. Okay, so she's a little clumsy. But soon she's looping into the green like she's always belonged there. The elder nods, satisfied. Now she becomes a messenger. You blink. A messenger? He waves you over. Time for your next lesson. Here's your historical anchor. In Maya cosmology, bees, especially stingless bees, were considered messengers between worlds. Not just pollinators, not just honeymakers, but carriers of intent, spiritual couriers. They flew between plants and flowers, yes, but also between gods and humans, life and death, sky and earth. The Maya even had a specific deity for this. Amuzenkab, the divine bee god, often depicted with wings and a human face, or a skeletal grin. He was feared and respected, a symbol of balance and consequence. And here's the twist. Some Maya rituals involved releasing bees as part of a ceremonial message. Not metaphoric bees. Actual, flying, buzzing emissaries. Say your family wanted to send blessings to a relative far away. Or maybe you needed a priest to know your crops had failed, or that your wife was giving birth. The story goes, you'd whisper a prayer near the hive, feed the bees with flower water, and let them fly. It was said the message would travel with them. Not with words. With energy. With essence. Historians still argue whether this was literal faith or symbolic gesture. But in oral accounts, people swore the messages were received. Dreams that night, birds echoing your words, or someone far away simply knowing what you had tried to send. And here comes the fringe theory. Brace yourself. Some modern Maya beekeepers believe the bees can retain memory across generations. That hives can carry emotional memory. That if your grandmother sang to the bees, her vibration still echoes in their rhythm today. Call it ancestral resonance. You call it weirdly comforting. The elder tells you about his own grandmother. How she used to hum lullabies to the hives at sunset. When I hum that same tune, he says softly, they buzz louder. Like they remember her. You glance toward Ixji's hive. She's returned now, wings shimmering with pollen. You hum gently, a low note like the elder taught you. 1, 2, 3 beats. Ixji tilts her tiny head. Okay, maybe you're imagining that. But she does land a little closer than before. You've become a part of the hive's geography. Now, onto something tactile. You and the elder begin building a new hive box. Not for honey, but for ritual use. It's shallower, more open. The design, he explains, is meant for airflow and harmony. Not just temperature regulation, but spiritual flow. The box is carved with symbols, spirals, bees, maize stalks, a rising sun. You help press softened wax into the corners, your fingers sticky and warm. The elder smears a bit on your nose, then acts completely innocent. It's a blessing, he insists. You don't believe him, but you leave it there anyway. Each hive in the ritual apiary has a role. One is for love. One is for mourning. One is for guidance. People come to these hives not to collect, but to offer. They bring flowers, drops of honey, bits of cloth, beads, whispered hopes. They stand still. Listen. Sometimes for hours. Sometimes in tears. And when a bee lands on them, it's considered a reply. The elder calls it the hive's vote. You ask if the bees ever refuse someone. He just shrugs. They know. You're beginning to suspect these bees have stronger opinions than most people you know. Here's your quirky tidbit. There's a Maya tale that says bees were once stars who came to Earth because they wanted to taste flowers. But they were so enchanted by sweetness, they forgot the sky. So now, every time you see a bee flying toward the sun, it's just trying to remember where it came from. You pause to watch one now. Flying straight up. Buzzing like a compass needle. Maybe it remembers. That evening, as fireflies blink lazily in the trees and frogs start their nightly gossip, the elder invites you to a candle ceremony. 3 hives, 3 candles, 3 notes. You hum. He hums. The bees stir, but they're calm. The air feels thick with memory. You close your eyes and send a message. Not a word, not a sentence. Just a feeling. Gratitude. Wonder. When you open your eyes, Ixji has landed on your shoulder. No big deal. Just a star visiting for the night. You're not sure when it happens exactly. Maybe somewhere between the 100th hum or the 50th bee, but something shifts. You stop feeling like an outsider. Not because you've earned some mystical beekeeper badge, though that would be excellent merch, but because the bees simply stop treating you like a tourist. They crawl on your arm without hesitation, land on your neck like it's a freeway rest stop. One even takes a brief stroll across your eyelid while you're napping. You don't flinch. You don't freak out. You just hum. Today's lesson? You're learning to read the hive's mood. It's more complicated than you think. The elder hands you a flat stone slate, its surface dotted with tiny notches and stains. This, he says, is a weather diary. You raise an eyebrow. He explains, ancient Maya beekeepers didn't have thermometers or smartphone alerts, but they did have ears, eyes, and hives. They recorded patterns. When bees were louder, when they swarmed the entrance, when they blocked it with wax, when they stopped flying altogether. Over time, this turned into a system. A kind of meteorological symphony. If the bees changed their rhythm, rain was coming. Or wind. Or sometimes something stranger. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Maya farmers often consulted beekeepers before planting maize. Because the bees knew. Their behavior aligned with subtle atmospheric shifts. So if the hive went quiet, you held off planting. If they buzzed late into the night, you prepared for heat. This wasn't just practical. It was mystical. You sit beside a hive and try it for yourself. Eyes closed. Ears open. Buzz. Soft flow, steady. The bee version of elevator music. But then a sudden spike. A rising tone. You glance up just as a bank of clouds rolls over the sun. They're tiny winged barometers. And they're better at forecasting than your weather app. The elder shows you another trick. He dips his fingers into water and flicks droplets near the hive. The bees pause, listening. Then one darts up. Then another. Within minutes, a group begins fanning their wings, a cooling maneuver usually reserved for hot afternoons. You see, he says, they feel everything. You nod, but you're still trying to figure out how they feel it. Some say it's the wind, he adds. Others say it's the earth's breath. Historians still argue whether Maya beekeepers were truly tracking weather or if they were interpreting divine moods. Because in many communities, the hives weren't just barometers, they were oracles. Here's your quirky fringe moment. In a few remote villages, there are stories of hives that sang before earthquakes. Not buzzed. Low, droning hums that shifted in frequency moments before tremors began. Some claim the bees knew. Others think it's retroactive myth-making. You're somewhere in the middle. Still buzzing about it. Midday comes hot and heavy. You retreat to the shade while the elder prepares a strange, milky concoction in a gourd. It's honey-thinned water, infused with flower nectar, a splash of bark tincture, and, surprise, some chewed-up wax. For the bees, he grins. Then he dumps the whole thing in front of a hive entrance. You're horrified. That's going to make a mess. He just nods, satisfied. And he's right. The bees go bonkers. Not chaotic, just excited. They dance in little figure eights, buzz each other in midair, and perform what can only be described as a rave on the landing platform. This, apparently, is a celebration ritual. A bee party. You watch them swirl and dart and communicate with invisible signals you can barely comprehend. Then the elder taps your shoulder. He hands you a small clay disc. Time for your first glyph. This is big. Every beekeeper carves a personal glyph once they've passed the listening stage. It's not just a symbol, it's a contract. Between you and the bees. Between your hum and their wings. You kneel beside the ceremonial hive, thinking, what are you even supposed to draw? You settle on a spiral with a single line running through the center. The elder watches. Says nothing. But when you place the disc beside the hive, the bees approach it. One lands. Another. Good choice, he murmurs. You're weirdly proud. Even though no one on Earth, or TikTok, would understand why. That night, under a moth-heavy moon, the elder invites you to sleep beside the ritual hive. You'll dream better, he says. And you do. Sort of. Your dreams are filled with wings and wax, voices that buzz in syllables you can almost translate. Somewhere, a bee speaks your name. Somewhere you answer, but your voice comes out as a hum. And in the distance, a glyph glows like firelight. When you wake, the elder's already up, grinding something in a stone bowl. You dreamed, yes? You nod. Then it's time. Time for what? You're not sure. But XG has landed on your thumb again, and she seems to know. So you follow her. Past the hives. Past the trees. Into something new. You follow XG like she's your spiritual GPS. No buzzing reroutes, no recalculating voice. Just a calm, steady flight deeper into the forest. The elder doesn't follow. He just says, go where she leads. You won't get lost unless you deserve to. Okay then. No pressure. The jungle feels different this morning. Warmer, wetter, quieter. Like the trees are holding their breath. The usual chorus of parrots and cicadas hushes to a whisper as you pass. Even the wind seems to tread lightly. XG darts between branches, spiraling now and then as if checking to see whether you're still coming. You are. Of course you are. This tiny bee has become your personal guide through time and space, and turning back now would feel like missing your own birthday party. Eventually, she leads you to a crumbling stone wall, half swallowed by moss and vines. You might have walked right past it if not for her circling. Carefully, you brush away the greenery, revealing a carved doorway. Just 3 steps beyond, a forgotten shrine. And inside? Real ones. Ancient ones. Built straight into the stone, long abandoned but still bearing the hexagonal ghosts of former colonies. It smells of dry honey, old wax, and the faint trace of copal, sweet, resinous, ceremonial. Bees no longer live here, but their legacy does. Your historical fact of the day. Some Maya temples had sections explicitly dedicated to bee rituals. Not just agriculture, but cosmic correspondence. Bees were believed to be sacred threads stitching the fabric of the 3 worlds, Xibalba, the underworld, the middle world, ours, and the upper world of gods and stars. This shrine might have been one such place. XG settles on one of the ancient hive holes, motionless, as if listening. And then you hear it too. A low vibration. Not buzzing. Not wind. More like memory. Some say stones can hold sound. That a whispered word, spoken often enough, can lodge itself in a wall like moss in mortar. Scholars still debate whether Maya rituals were intentionally sonic, crafted with tones and chants to echo through time, to awaken places like this when the right hum is finally sung again. You place your palm on the wall. You hum softly your glyph tune. The wall answers. Not loudly. Just enough. You step back, heart thudding with something halfway between fear and wonder. And here's your fringe tidbit. There's a belief in certain villages that bees can reincarnate. That when a beloved elder passes, their spirit sometimes returns in the form of a bee, usually one that lands on your hand, follows you for days, or appears during a funeral. Some people leave open jars of honey on windowsills for weeks, just in case their grandmother drops by. You sit now, alone in the shrine, tracing the ancient hive combs with your fingertips. Imagining what these bees once carried, not just pollen, but prayers. Maybe someone once whispered here the name of their lost child. Maybe another pleaded for rain, or thanked the gods for sparing their maize. You're struck by the quiet power of it. How something as small as a bee can carry a burden so large. XG lands again, this time on your collarbone. Her wings don't buzz. She just rests there, a tiny heartbeat against your skin. You decide to stay a little longer. And as the afternoon sun bleeds through the treetops, you notice more bees arriving. Not just XG. Others. Circling. Landing. Humming. Where did they come from? No idea. Maybe the hive sent them. Maybe the shrine called them. Or maybe, just maybe, some things are drawn together by resonance, by patterns older than words, older than roads, older than maps. You lie back on the cool stone floor, bees hovering above you in lazy spirals. Their shadows flicker on the walls like dancing spirits. One lands on your wrist. Another on your shoe. You've become part of their world now, not an observer, not a guest, but a note in the hive's ongoing song. When you finally rise to leave, XG lifts off again, guiding you back along the invisible path. The shrine doesn't vanish. It just recedes behind vines and silence, waiting for the next hum to find it. You walk slowly, savoring each step, like exiting a dream you're not quite ready to wake from. Back at the apiary, The elder is waiting with a steaming bowl of atoll, warm, thick, sweet with maize and honey. He doesn't ask what you saw. He just nods and says, "You heard it, didn't you?" You nod. He smiles. "Then you're ready." "Ready for what?" He shrugs. "You'll know." That night, you lie in your hammock, the jungle purring around you, the scent of wax and nectar in your hair. You watch a single bee perched on a thread of moonlight, her silhouette still against the stars. Maybe it's 6G. Maybe it's someone else. But as your eyes drift closed, you hum your glyph. And you swear the hive hums back. You wake to drums. Not the boom-boom dance party kind, but slow, deliberate beats that throb through the trees like a pulse. You roll out of your hammock still half-wrapped in sleep, and stumble toward the sound, barefoot and mosquito-bitten. The elder's already dressed in his ceremony robe, dark cotton embroidered with bees, maize, stars. His hair is tied back, his eyes soft but focused. He hands you a bundle of herbs and a strip of honey-soaked bark. "Today," he says, "you learn how we speak back." "To the bees? To the gods?" He just smiles. You follow. The whole village is gathering near a central altar, a broad, circular space ringed by torches and draped with vines. In the center, a large clay platform sits atop stone slabs. At each corner, hives. Real, buzzing, active Melipona beechii hives, humming like a choir tuning up before showtime. You take your place near the elder, heart thudding. This isn't one of those watch and learn moments. You're part of it now. Here comes your historical anchor. Maya beekeeping wasn't just an economic activity, it was sacred labor. Beekeepers, called Jmen Kolokab, were trained not only in hive care but in ritual practices. They were healers, dream interpreters, and sometimes spiritual intermediaries. Their role merged science, magic, and community service, like if your local pharmacist also summoned rain on weekends. Today's ritual is the Kal Kich, a hive blessing performed at the start of the dry season. It's meant to protect the bees, ensure strong honey flow, and align the keepers with the natural world. You kneel, holding the bundle of herbs. One by one, each person approaches the hives with offerings: flowers, wax figurines, carved jade, and even handwritten notes tucked into hollow reeds. Children hum softly. Old women chant. A young man places a feather on the hive and steps back without a word. Then it's your turn. You glance at the elder. He nods. You step forward, heart pounding, and whisper to the bees. Just a few words. Nothing grand. But you mean them. You place the bark offering gently beside the hive. One bee flies out, circles your head, and settles on the offering. Everyone lets out a soft murmur of approval. That's a good sign, apparently. Bee-approved ritual. Not bad for your first go. Now for the quirky bit. After the offering, the elder produces a small gourd filled with what looks like clay. Turns out, it's fermented honey mixed with wild herbs, a kind of ceremonial bee wine. It's not for the humans. It's for the hive. He dips a leaf into the mixture and offers it to the bees. They drink. You blink. One by one, they land on the leaf and lap at the fermented mix like tiny lushes. According to tradition, this helps align the hive's spirit with the human one, like a sacred toast. Some legends even say bees get tipsy and enter a trance-like state, more receptive to messages and emotions. You ask the elder if that's true. He raises one eyebrow. Depends on the message. And here's your open scholarly debate. Researchers today still wonder whether these rituals had real biochemical effects on the bees, or if the rituals were more about human alignment. Was the drunken bee behavior a result of fermentation or just observation bias? Hard to say. What's clear is the ritual itself shaped a deep bond between humans and insects, one built on respect, not control. As the sun climbs, the final stage begins, the bee dance. No, not the waggle dance, though, fun fact, stingless bees do have their own version of it. This is the humankind. Drums speed up. Villagers form a circle. They begin to sway, step, spin, mimicking the motion of bees. Spirals, figure eights, tight turns, and outstretched arms. It's beautiful, and just a little ridiculous. One kid flaps his arms and bumps into a drum. Everyone laughs. You're pulled in. At first, you stumble. Your movements feel stiff and awkward. But soon you loosen. You find your rhythm. Your hum. You become part of the swarm. Not as a drone. Not even as a queen. Just one more bee in the dance of things. Later, sweat-drenched and smiling, you collapse in the shade. A bowl of honey water is passed around. It's sweet, tart, spiced with something warm, maybe cinnamon, maybe magic. You drink deeply. XG buzzes by, brushing your ear like a whispered inside joke. You wonder what she thought of your dance. Later that night, as fireflies blink and the drums fade into cricket songs, you and the elders sit by the hives in silence. He lights a small copal resin block, and its smoke curls upward like a staircase for dreams. He says, "Do you know what the bees really carry?" You guess, pollen? Nectar? Secrets? He shakes his head. "Trust," he says. "Ours in them. Theirs in us. That's what makes the hive sing." You hum. And somewhere inside, the bees hum back. You wake before sunrise. Not out of duty, but because something in your chest hums louder than sleep. The sky is a soft navy canvas brushed with hints of tangerine. Birds aren't even up yet. But the bees? Already moving. It's migration day. You didn't even know bees could migrate, did you? Turns out, stingless bees don't often do long-range travel like their honeybee cousins, but some colonies do divide and move, especially when hives get too crowded or the environment shifts. Maya beekeepers, ever observant, learned to read the signs. A sudden decline in drone activity. A pause in queen laying. A peculiar hush in the hive. And when the moment came, they followed. Yes, you read that right. Sometimes, beekeepers followed their bees. Here comes your historical fix. Certain Maya communities would physically relocate with their bees during periods of environmental stress. Rather than forcing the bees to adapt, they'd honor the bees' instincts and move the hives to safer, healthier spots. Entire kin groups were known to shift their settlements alongside their colonies, treating hives like family elders that knew when to leave. Which is why today, the elder is packing. Not to abandon his home, but to lead you, and a few select hives, to a sacred grove where new colonies will be seeded. Not all hives move, he explains. Only the ones that dream of new trees. You help prepare the travel hive. It's not a cardboard box with air holes. No, this is an ancient art. A hollowed-out log. Sealed with beeswax and mud. Vented just enough to keep air flowing, dark enough to soothe the bees. Carried like a newborn. And then the ceremony begins. Before a hive moves, the elder sings. Not to the bees, but with them. It's low and slow, more tone than words, and you instinctively join in. Your hum isn't perfect, but it vibrates the inside of your ribcage. The hives respond, a subtle lift in pitch, a little more movement. The bees know something's happening. Then comes the fringe element. Before setting off, the elder rubs a line of ash across his forehead, drawn from burnt wax. To carry their memory, he says. You follow suit. And off you go. A small procession. 3 people, 4 hives, and 1 fluttering cloud of scouts darting ahead. You think of this as the world's sleepiest parade. The forest welcomes you. Or maybe it just tolerates you. Either way, the air smells like wet bark and possibility. You cross shallow creeks, skirt stone walls long overtaken by fig trees, and duck beneath spiderwebs that shine like lace in the dappled light. Ixchi sticks close. At one point, she vanishes, only to reappear 10 minutes later with 2 other bees. You swear they look smug, like they've scouted the spot. The elder calls out, "They've chosen." The clearing is small but perfect. Sunlight dapples just enough. Nearby flowers bloom with abandon. A hollowed ceiba stump offers a natural cavity. You set the hive down gently. It's warm in your arms, like bread just out of the oven. You open the entrance slightly and back away. For a moment, nothing. Then buzz. Bees emerge, sniff the air, do a few orientation laps. A new home. New rhythms. Same heart. Here's your scholarly argument. Some researchers believe this migratory behavior is what helped preserve Melipona beechii genetics across centuries of environmental shifts. Others argue the movements were symbolic, not survival-driven, but spiritually motivated, tied to celestial alignments or ancestral cycles. Was it science or sacred instinct? The elder says it doesn't matter. Either way, we followed the hum. You're tasked with lighting a tiny fire nearby, not to scare bees, but to offer smoke as a grounding ritual. It calms them, he says, and reminds them this place has been touched by humans with good hands. You kneel, strike a spark, and the flame blooms like a secret revealed. And now, the weird bit. The elder begins talking to the hive. Not chanting, just chatting. He thanks the bees, names them, offers stories. At one point, he says something so casually, it lodges in your brain. "This queen is my grandmother." You glance at him, expecting a smile or wink. Nothing. He means it. Or at least, he wants you to consider the possibility. You don't ask questions. You just listen. And somewhere deep in your chest, you feel something settle. The hive is here now. And so are you. The rest of the day passes gently. Bees explore. Flowers beckon. You share roasted maize cakes and fresh mango under the trees. The air buzzes, not loudly, but richly, like a well-tuned instrument vibrating through space. Before heading back, you kneel beside the hive one last time and whisper your glyph song. A bee lands on your shoulder. You close your eyes. And in that moment, you don't just hear the hum. You are the hum. You return to the village like someone who's left part of their soul behind, and maybe you have. The jungle feels warmer now, fuller, like it's aware of your steps in a way it wasn't before. Even the chickens at the edge of the village seem to bow their feathery heads as you pass. You're not sure if it's respect or just hunger. Probably both. The elder is silent on the walk home. Not cold, not distant. Just peaceful. You get the feeling that words would only muddy things. There's a rhythm now between you both. The rhythm of people who've moved bees through time. By the time you reach the hives again, Ixchi is already there, waiting on the edge of the first box like she never left. You swear she winks. Life settles into a softer groove. No more frantic lessons or dizzying glyph recitations. No tests or hive-related crises. Just daily rhythms. You help clean the hives, gather fallen wax for candles, and even assist with making a small batch of balch, that mildly fermented honey and bark drink the villagers sip during long, slow evenings. It tastes like childhood and time travel. Now for your historical fact. Balch wasn't just a village happy hour drink. It played a major role in ancient rituals. Priests and healers drank it before ceremonies, often entering trance states believed to connect them to the spirit world. Honey wasn't just sugar, it was a portal. And stingless bees were the gatekeepers. On one of those lazy afternoons, the elder calls you over. He's polishing a large conch shell, smooth, luminous, and carved with what you now recognize as beglyphs. "This was my teacher's," he says. "Now it's yours." He hands it to you without ceremony. No speech. No dramatic music cue. just the shell. And the weight of it. It's heavier than you expect. Not just in grams, but in gravity. You cradle it, unsure whether to blow it like a horn or tuck it under your arm like a sleeping puppy. The elder leans back and closes his eyes. "It's your turn to teach now," he murmurs. "Wait, what?" "You're still learning. Still fumbling. Still mispronouncing the word for pollen. You can't possibly teach anyone. Can you?" Apparently, the bees think otherwise. That very night, as you sit beside the hives, a small child approaches. Maybe 7 years old. Big eyes. Scraped knees. He points at the hives and says, "Are they dreaming?" You blink. Then nod. He sits down next to you. And just like that, you're the mentor. Your fringe tidbit for this round. In some Maya communities, bee knowledge is passed through dream apprenticeships. Young ones are told to sleep near the hives and wait for the bees to appear in their dreams. If they do, it means they've been chosen to learn. If not, no shame, just wasn't their path. But when a child dreams of bees 3 times, that's destiny calling. You ask the boy if he's dreamed of bees. He nods slowly. 5 times. You whistle low. Show off. He grins. You begin with simple things. Letting him touch the wax, watching the foragers return, teaching him how to hum softly to calm the hive. It feels surreal, like only yesterday you were the wide-eyed outsider with bee-stung fingers and no clue what a calabash gourd was. But here you are, passing the shell. And here's the debate of the day. Anthropologists continue to argue over how much of this bee-human relationship was practical versus symbolic. Were Maya beekeepers elite priests using honey for offerings only? Or were they commoners, blending utility with mystery? Was the beekeeping spiritualization a post-colonial adaptation? Or has it always been that way? You have no idea. And you don't care. Because when the boy hums a little too loudly and the hive responds with a gentle wave of movement, not alarm, not defense, just awareness, you know he's listening. Not with ears, with resonance. Later that week, the elder calls a quiet gathering under the stars. No big event, just candles, soft flutes, bowls of honeycombed fruit. He stands before the group and says, "The hives will outlive us, but we pass forward our part." Then he turns to you. You half expect him to announce some new title. Grand Bee Whisperer, Glyph Lord, Keeper of the Buzz. He just says your name, and everyone hums. Not your glyph song, your name stretched into a hum. As if the village has transformed it into music. Bees join in, fluttering over your head in soft spirals. It's not applause. It's acceptance. You don't need a crown. You already have wings. The dry season stretches lazily across the land, and your days find a soft, golden rhythm. Mornings begin with dew-slick leaves and bees already deep in their nectar ballet. Afternoons slip by under woven hammocks and half-finished honey bread. Evenings thrum with stories that trail off before their endings, like the best ones always do. You're not counting time anymore. Just blossoms. The elder rarely speaks now. He sits by the oldest hive, sometimes for hours, eyes closed, hand resting gently on the log like it's a sleeping animal. You do the same. Sometimes with the boy curled beside you, sometimes alone. And sometimes, though it always catches you by surprise, XG lands on your wrist as if checking your pulse. One morning, the elder doesn't rise with the sun. You don't panic. You already know. You enter his hut quietly. His eyes are closed, breath still, arms folded neatly. A dried wax disc rests on his chest. His final offering. He's left with the bees. There are no tears. Just smoke. You burn copal for hours. The villagers hum, soft and low, a single note held like a candle. Bees float gently over the smoke, spiraling into the sky like golden prayers. You bury him near the sacred grove. Just beyond the new hive you helped settle. The boy places the conch shell on the stone marker. Then looks at you. "Now you're the elder," he says. You almost laugh. Almost. But the weight of the hive is real now. And it's not heavy, it's warm. A trust passed hand to hand, wing to wing. Here's your last historical moment. Archaeologists have found stingless beehives buried alongside Maya elites, especially priests and healers. In some cases, glyphs on nearby stelae even depict bees flying upward beside stylized human souls. It's not a metaphor, they meant it. Bees weren't just insects. They were guides. And your fringe fact. Some modern Maya families still whisper to their hives before big life events. Weddings. Births. Deaths. They tell the bees so the bees can keep the balance. Today you whisper a quiet thanks. A promise. You clean the hives with steady hands, recoat the entrances with fresh wax, and sing your glyph song low and sure. It's different now. Richer. Yours. And finally, that lingering scholarly argument. Did the bees truly understand? Did they respond to language? Emotion? Did humans merely project meaning onto the hum? Or was there really something shared? A pulse, a pattern, a co-evolved dance? You think back to your first stingless greeting. To the drunk bees sipping ceremonial honey. To the glyphs you sang. To the queen named after a grandmother. And you shrug. Of course they understood, you murmur. As the stars prick the sky and the jungle begins its nightly sigh, the boy curls beside you. You wrap him in a soft shawl and hum quietly. A lullaby of wax and wings. The hive hums back. Together you drift. Wind down, 300 words. And now, as the hives sleep and the forest wraps itself in night, you let your breath slow. Everything feels softened here. The edges of the leaves, the hush of the stars, the faint scent of honey clinging to your skin like a memory. The bees are still awake, of course, always a few keeping watch, shifting quietly through the hive in moonlight. You imagine them like little monks, padding through corridors, whispering bee prayers to one another, tending warmth and sweetness in the darkness. You run your hand along the hive's smooth bark. Swarm. Alive. A heartbeat that's not yours, but somehow holds you in place. You're not a guest anymore. You never were really. You were just remembering a language your body already knew. Out in the woods, a jaguar coughs once, low and distant. Not a threat. Just another neighbor. You watch the boy sleep, one hand curled under his cheek, the other open beside a beeswax candle burned down to a soft glow. You whisper a blessing over him. Not words, exactly. Just intention. Protection. Curiosity. The hive hums. You smile. The ritual's complete. You stretch, yawn, and lean back against the cool stone of the altar. The stars above blink slower now. Or maybe your eyes just do. Either way, it's enough. You made it. Another night. Another dance with wings and whispers. So rest, keeper of the hum. Let the bees carry your dreams tonight. Let them spin golden stories behind your closed eyes. Let them teach you how to fly slowly. You're home now. Sleep well.